On today's lesson, I'm going to share what I think is the single most important concept to playing better singles. And at the end of this 15-minute video, if you understand the concept, you'll be missing less, hitting more winners, and winning more tennis matches. So let's get started. If you want to play better and win more matches, where you want to start is learning how to reduce errors. And typically, errors will come in three major buckets. You'll have the first bucket, which will be technical errors. So that's anything with your stroke, footwork, positioning, balance, anything that can lead to a flawed swing. So let's say you had a continental grip on your forehand, you're taking it back with your strings wide open. Obviously, you're not going to get much topspin, and that could lead to a lot of errors that are deep. Technical errors are so important. But typically speaking, if I give you a YouTube video about a technical error, you might understand the concept, and then you're going to go have to get thousands and thousands and thousands of reps, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, until you see really meaningful change. And my goal, as always, is to have you watch one of my YouTube videos and get better right away. So while technical corrections are super important, we're not going to touch those ones today. The second type of error can be your opponent is forcing you into a mistake legitimately from a very good shot. And yes, there are things we can do to influence the shots that our opponent tries, but ultimately we don't control them. If they want to hit a moon ball on every single ball, they're probably going to. And if they want to chip every single shot, yes, there are things we can do that make that difficult, but if they want to attempt it, they can. And so for that reason, we're not going to touch that bucket either today. The third type of error typically comes from a mental mistake. That can be emotional. So let's say you get nervous in a match and that leads to tension. I get it. That's a mental mistake. It could be a tactical mistake. You're choosing the wrong shot. You're trying to go really fast down the line from behind the baseline. That's also a mental mistake. The third type of mental mistake, which we're really going to focus on today, is how you choose a target. And I see people making a ton of mistakes with their targets. And it's something where at the end of this video, if you understand my concept, you can get better immediately. So the first mistake that I see is people don't have a target. They're hitting cross court. And if I asked them where cross court they were aiming, they'd have no idea. They just said cross court to the deuce box. That's not good enough. Golfers have a saying called aim small, miss small. And so they don't just say, hey, I'm aiming in the fairway. They might pick a tree way out in the distance and say, I'm aiming to the left branch of that tree in the right center of the fairway. And what that does is it narrows your focus. So obviously no one is good enough to hit a target that small, but when you have a very specific target you're aiming for, it makes your misses much closer to the original target. If you just pick a big generic space, hey, I'm aiming anywhere in the deuce box, okay, well now your misses are gonna get much larger. So first and foremost, you gotta make sure that you're actually picking a target. The second mistake I see people making is they're picking a target that's far too aggressive. So maybe you're picking a spot very close to the line, right? Now, this is gonna be an issue for the third reason with the target is because you actually think you're gonna hit the ball where you aim. And that's not how targets work. If you could hit the ball exactly where you aim, wouldn't Novak aim right here for every single ball? I mean, objectively, that would be just an incredible shot. You're hitting fast in a corner. He would go one corner, second corner, side to side to side to side. The reality is Novak doesn't hit the ball where he aims, and neither does a 3-0, neither does a 4-0, neither does a D1 All-American. So people will aim to a spot right here, and I'm not gonna lie, this is a great spot if you could hit it here. The reality is you can't, and that's why I see so many wide errors on a regular basis. So my goal with today's lesson is to teach you how to pick an optimal shot target so that even your misses and your good shots will both lead to winning tennis. So the main concept we have to understand is when you pick a target, you don't have a specific spot that you're gonna hit to. You really have what we call a shot pattern. So let's say you pick a nice smart target right here, kind of like in the middle of the box, depth and width-wise, right? That's a very responsible target. Now, the reality is when you hit a shot, you're very rarely gonna hit the target dead on. Sometimes you're accidentally gonna miss deep into the left. Sometimes you're gonna miss to the right. Sometimes, unfortunately, you're gonna miss short, right? The reality is we never know what ball is coming. If you knew when you were accidentally gonna miss deep, then you would never make a ground stroke error behind the baseline, right? That just wouldn't make sense. And if you knew when you were accidentally gonna miss farther to the right, well, then you would have aimed more to the left, so you could have hit your intended target. So that's a big concept you have to understand is you really don't know what shot is coming. And that's why you wanna pick a responsible target so that all the possible outcomes end up in a great space. And just to give you a visual for what this looks like, I'm gonna show you some videos I took recently of top D1 men's players at Duke University. They're gonna be trying to hit a target off a ball feed. off live ball. And then we also have a good high school player. And so you can see the differences of these shot patterns and how close to the target people actually get. All right, so let's take a look here. We got some ball feeds. We got one of the best players at Duke right now. They're a top 10 team. Obviously, I played there and I coached there, so I got a lot of love for the program. But you can see as he's aiming for this red cone, the feeds are relatively simple. They're flat, they're slow, they're in the same spot every time, and they're relatively at the same rhythm. And so you can see that he's getting close to that red target, but he's not hitting it. And this is just the common theme that you have to understand. Yes, you can hit close to where you're aiming if you're a really good player, but you almost never hit the ball exactly where your target is. And that is the idea of a shot pattern. And so as we see more balls get filled in here, you can see it's going to be a little longer than it is wide. And that's because tennis is a lifting sport. You should be swinging low to high, not across the ball. And better players understand this. And that's why the better players will have a longer shot pattern than a wider shot pattern. On the run there, so now we got this shot pattern, this oval, and you can see it's really tight actually. I don't think you understand quite how good this is, but it's still pretty long. It's longer than it is wide, like we said. And if you look at the dimensions of the court, from the shortest one that he's hit, it's just past the service line, all the way to the deepest one. That's probably about 15 feet long. And when you look at his widest left to his widest right, that's about 7 to 8 feet on the court. So even though he's insanely accurate, that's still a pretty big dispersion that you have to look at. And so it's something to consider is that even on a ball feed, this is the best he can do. What is that going to look like when he's on live ball? What is that going to look like when he's under pressure? And so what I want you to take a look at now is he's going to hit live ball cross courts, which is still pretty easy, but we'll see what happens. All right, so we've got live ball now, and I think you're going to be relatively surprised at how much larger this gets compared to a ball feed. You can see we already got a miss right off the bat, a couple shorter, but the more there's variability in the ball coming to you, the deeper the spins, the height, the speed. When everything is different and you're on the move, it's going to be much more difficult for you to be consistent to your target. And then factor in tournament pressure, wind from outdoors, fast court, maybe balls that aren't great. The shot pattern is just going to grow and grow. And that is why you want to move your target into an optimal spot. So you can see these two players are awesome. They're absolutely ripping the ball. We're indoors. But you can see the shot pattern is significantly larger than it was on the last rep. We're on the run here, and you can see that one's not even close to the cone. We're on the run again, and we actually miss the court, and that's common. The more you have to move, the more you're going to miss. So we can take this oval. It's still an oval. It's longer than it is wide because he's got a good lifting stroke. But this is much, much larger than the last time. And again, when you're looking at the dimensions of the court, from that service line to the baseline, it's 18 feet. And so he's got some inside the service line and some deeper. That's like a 23, 24 foot long shot pattern. And when we got sideline to center of the court, that's about 13 and a half feet. So it's actually really, really large. And when you compare it to his ball feed, you can see how much tighter depth and width-wise it was on the ball feed compared to the live ball. And so this is just going to be standard for everybody. And now what I want to do is I want to show you a solid high school girls player, and so you can see what her shot pattern looks like compared to one of the best players in D1 college. All right, so we've got our high school player on the far side. She's got a good looking technical forehand, but I think you're going to see right away, even on the ball feed, we got a pretty big dispersion through 3 balls here. I mean, her shot pattern is going to be significantly larger than that of a D1 men's college tennis player. And so her target cannot be the same as that D1 college player. You can see we got balls deep through the middle. We have short angles. We've missed the court a couple times. And again, this is all off the easiest possible situation. Flat ball feeds right in your strike zone, indoors with no tournament pressure. That ball's a little bit of an outlier because it hit the let cord. We got a miss in the net. That's a beautiful strike right there. Again, I love her technique. Bang. And we actually hit the cone. And so you can see part of hitting a cone is luck, but she could easily look at those 4 balls and say, look, I can hit my target. I'm good enough to aim wherever I want to aim. My counter to that would be, yes, you are good enough to do that, not consistently, because look, you're almost as likely to hit the ball out as you were to hit your target. And this is just a very, very common trap that people can fall into. Yes, you can hit the target sometimes, but not all the time. And if we look at the widest shots here, again, it's about a 13-foot wide dispersion. The depth is still relatively large. When we compare this to the D1 college player, you can see the difference. This was his live ball, so it's much more narrow. The depth, he had more shots, but the depth is about the same. And then when you look at the ball feed scenario, again, just to remind you how much tighter it got. So you're going to have to get a feel. You're going to have to go on the ball machine and aim for a target and see what your shot pattern looks like. You're going to have to do it on live ball. And then you're going to have to assume that under pressure, when you're playing points and you're moving around, it's going to get even bigger. So now I'm going to go on the court and show you where I would be aiming based on your level moving forward. So hopefully this idea of a shot pattern is making sense. You don't actually aim to a cone, you're aiming to an oval, and the size of that oval definitely depends on your level and also the situation you're in. Like we mentioned, when you're in trouble, the oval gets bigger. When you're nervous, the oval gets bigger. A D1 All-American, their shot pattern is much smaller than a 3-0 player. So what do we do with this information? If you were a 3-0 player just getting started in the game in singles, this would be my target right here. 1 yard past the center service line. Because your oval is probably the size of the entire court, if not even larger. So again, the mistake people make is they say, well, I don't want to hit here. Don't worry, you're not going to hit that target almost ever if you're 3-0. You're accidentally going to hit a nice ball in the corner, accidentally going to hit a nice little angle. Sometimes you're going to hit a little deeper, right? So 3-0 player, I'd be aiming about here. As the level goes up, 4-0, I'd maybe go a yard or two deeper and one step over here. And again, I know that 4-0 players can hit very good balls, and that's what leads to poor discipline, is because they know they can hit the good shot in the corner. That allows them to try that ball more often, and that just leads to more errors. If you aim right here, you will hit plenty of balls in that corner on accident. You have to be comfortable with that. If you hit the ball right here, you're treading water, which in recreational singles is a great place to be because your opponent will likely do something silly and make the error for you. And then once we get up into that 5'5", D1 college level, I'd say, hey, you can aim about 6-7 feet from the line under pressure and feel like your oval is going to be in a mainly solid spot. So again, this would kind of be my progression of targets. It gets a little deeper and a little more to the sideline. But again, if I had a top pro in the world and I was coaching them, I would almost forbid them to ever go deeper or wider than this, even though I know they have great control. If they aim for the optimal target, all the options are in a quality spot. So hopefully you've learned this today. I know it can take a lot of discipline. I know you think you can hit that shot on command, but if you could, you'd be doing it more often. So take this, run with it, and win more singles matches.